Hey guys, check this out. I got a really funny joke for you, right? Are you ready? Doak Walker finalist list. That's the joke, because Dylan Sampson's not on the list. Goodness gracious, how embarrassing.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Cain. So happy to have you guys along for the ride. You guys know it. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and we're number one spot for Tennessee football news and entertainment. Appreciate you guys making us your first listen, your first watch. Every day is for making this show what it is. Got a fun show coming up. We'll work in reverse order here. Ward Wednesday, Josh Ward coming up in segment 3. Tennessee did pick up a running back commit for the class of 2025 earlier this week. Running back Daune Morris flipping from Southern Cal over to the University of Tennessee. We'll get the scout on the Oakland standouts, in-state prospect. But first, we're going to get started with why it is an absolute embarrassment that Tennessee running back Dylan Sampson is not considered one of the best running backs in the country. Just hilarious. Really, the people outdid themselves who vote on the Doak Walker Award, which is annually given out to the nation's best running back. That's your show lineup here today, and couldn't do without our friends over at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and they're going to get $150 in bonus bets if your team, or if you win your first $5 bet. You can visit FanDuel.com to go ahead and get started today. Okay, so here are the finalists for the Doak Walker Award. And again, Doak Walker is an award that is given annually to the nation's premier running back, okay? And they went ahead and tweeted out kind of who all were the finalists here today, and put out a list. And Dylan Sampson wasn't one of the 3 finalists. Who were the 3 finalists? Well, Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State, who's having a phenomenal year. Caleb Johnson, running back from Iowa, who is having a phenomenal year. And Omarion Hampton, who is the running back from North Carolina, who is having a fantastic year, a phenomenal year. And I'm not taking anything away from those 3 guys. Those 3 guys should be All-Americans. Those 3 guys are really, really good. But boy, the committee or whoever votes on who wins this award and who are finalists and all that, just so lazy. So lazy. All they did, they pulled up, I've got it right here in front of me, ncaa.com/stats. And all they did was go over here to the individual statistics, drop-down menu, rushing yards, and all they did was go over here and look at the top 3 running backs in the country who have the most rushing yards. Ashton Jeanty, 2,062 rushing yards. Again, really, really impressive. Caleb Johnson, 1,492 rushing yards. Again, really, really impressive. Omarion Hampton, 1,475 rushing yards. Again, really, really impressive. You have to go all the way down to number 7 to get Dylan Sampson, who again, played in, of the first 3 games, played in a total of, 7 quarters out of the possible whatever that was, and a guy who only got 11 carries last week because Tennessee was playing UTEP. I know everybody's got cupcakes on the schedule. I get all that. I recognize it. But Dylan Sampson has 1,307 rushing yards this season. And if you want to look at the nitty-gritty here, I thought Dylan Sampson's rushing attempts were going to be a whole lot more than these guys because they were earlier in the year. His 231 attempts, that being for Dylan Sampson, is fewer than Omarion Hampton's 259, is fewer than it's fewer than Ashton Jeanty's 275 rushing attempts. It's just a little bit more than Caleb Johnson over at Iowa's 223. But nonetheless, 1,307 rushing yards is pretty good. Dylan Sampson has scored 22 rushing touchdowns, which is 1 more than Caleb Johnson, who, from the Big Ten, they play football up there, but he's a finalist. It's 5 less than Jeanty, who, again, Boise State, pretty good ball club, but, group of 5. And it is, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more. 8 more rushing touchdowns than Hampton from North Carolina, who currently has 14. Again, that's a solid year, but when we're talking about the best running back in the nation, how in the world, from the Southeastern Conference, from a team that is 9-2, from a team that is a win away from getting in the college football playoffs, how in the world is Dylan Sampson not listed as a finalist? It is absolutely embarrassing. Let's add insult to injury here, shall we? Tennessee did a great job. Tennessee social media did a fantastic job. They were ready for, regardless of if he was going to be named a finalist or not. They made a graphic just showing how dominant Dylan Sampson has been so far this year. Rushing touchdowns, he has 22. That is number one in the SEC. Okay, Dylan Sampson leads the SEC in all of these categories. You ready for it? Rushing touchdown in SEC games, consecutive games with the rushing touchdown, rushing yards in SEC games, 100-yard rushing games, rushing yards per game, points scored, points per game, rushing attempts, all-purpose yards, and all-purpose yards per game. He leads the SEC in every single one of those categories. Tennessee, or Dylan Sampson, I guess, 44.9%. That is, he scored on 22 of UT's 49 offensive touchdowns in all games. That's 44.9% of his scoring for UT. Scored on 12 of UT's 19 offensive touchdowns in SEC play. He has accounted for 63.2% of Tennessee's touchdowns in Southeastern Conference play, the best conference in college football. And yes, I still will say that. There are national pundits out there that want to say maybe the SEC is just, down a little bit this year. There's not one dominant team. Yeah, I agree with you. There's not one dominant team in the Southeastern Conference, but I think top to bottom, it's just, right? It just means more. Anyway, back to Sampson. Rushing touchdowns, 22, number one in the SEC, number one in Power 4 football, number 3 in college football. We just went over that there in a moment. That's the most ever, in UT single season. Rushing touchdown in SEC games, 12. That's number one, obviously, in the SEC. Consecutive games with a touchdown, 11 straight games. Number one in the SEC, tied for first in Power 4, tied for first in college football and FBS level, and the most ever in UT history. Rushing yards, 1,307, of course, leading the SEC, 5th in the Power 4, 7th in FBS, and the most in UT history since 2009. Rushing yards in SEC games, again, 873, that leads to the conference. 100-yard rushing games, he's had 9 this year. The other one, this past week, he finished with 77 rushing yards. He only had 11 carries, and Tennessee was blowing out UTEP 56-0. The other one, he finished with 93 rushing yards on the road at Oklahoma. So he was 7 away. So very easily could have 11 100-yard rushing games in all, 11 games played. But nonetheless, 9 games with a 100-yard rusher, tied for second in Power 4, tied for third in FBS, the most ever for Tennessee history since 1995. Rushing yards per game, 118.8. Leads the SEC, 6th in Power 4, 9th in college football, 2001, the last time that's happened at Tennessee. You're seeing a trend here, right? I mean, I'm not going to continue to go down this list, but Dylan Sampson has absolutely dominated this year. So am I trying to say Dylan Sampson deserves to win the award? No, I'm not trying to say that, because I understand Ashton Jeanty is a fantastic player. I understand that Caleb Johnson's a really good player. I understand that Marion Hampton's a great player, but the fact that Dylan Sampson's not in the conversation, the fact that Dylan Sampson, with his stats and his productions, especially stacked up against those other 3, is not one of the final 3, it's embarrassing. And it really begs to question the credibility of that award. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I'm not saying he should win, but the fact that it's kind of like Hendon Hooker not getting the nod over Stetson Bennett to go for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Like it really makes me question the credibility, the criteria of this award, because it's just flat out embarrassing. It's hilarious, to be honest. It's not the end of the world. Dylan Sampson wants to win a national championship more than any other award. I recognize that. But for a guy who has literally given his all for Tennessee this year and like will be his final year on campus, it sucks that he's not at least a finalist and can go to the award ceremony and kind of do all the hoopla that involves, because they went with 3 other guys. So, again, fantastic year so far for Jeanty, for Johnson, for Hampton. Dylan Sampson should be in there. Honestly, it should be Jeanty, it should be Johnson, and it should be Sampson, hands down. I mean, Marion Hampton's had a really good year, but 14 rushing touchdowns. Which one doesn't look like the other? 27 rushing touchdowns, 22 rushing touchdowns, 21 rushing touchdowns, 14 rushing touchdowns. In fact, if you want to get nitty-gritty here, look at R.J. Harvey from UCF. Actually, UCF's part of the big Power 4 conferences now, right? He has 1,458 rushing yards. Okay, that is just a few behind Amarian Hampton, who's a finalist. He had 1,475. RJ Harvey has 1,458. RJ Harvey has 21 rushing touchdowns. Hampton has 14. So again, the laziness of whoever decides this, the absolute laziness. Oh my gosh, it is so embarrassing. So embarrassing. So anyway, is what it is, but I thought I'd spend a little time here just talking about how ridiculous that is that Dylan Sampson isn't even named a finalist for the Doak Walker. Just, again, I'll say it again, just ridiculous. Hey, when we come back, one running back conversation to another. Tennessee gets the commit of 2025 tailback from Oakland High School, Daune Morris. We'll talk about him. What is Tennessee getting in the second back of the class? All that and more as we continue on here with the Wednesday show. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, guys, welcome back to your Wednesday show. A quick reminder, I'm not obviously on this show talking about the college football playoff rankings, but I did do a reactionary show late last night. So if you want to check that out, it should be in your feed right before this show. It should be in your YouTube feed as well. So if you want my reaction on where Tennessee was ranked in the college football playoff rankings and seeded from last night, go ahead and check that out. Again, where you get this podcast free and available. That is Locked On Vols. All right, earlier this week, Tennessee went ahead and reeled off the commitment of 2025 running back Daune Morris. Daune Morris is a guy that Tennessee had a whole lot of interest in. Thought that Justin Baker's in this class as the running back. He's been committed for quite some time. He was committed when Jerry Mack was the coach here, coaching the running backs. But Tennessee thought they wanted to add a second back, but they wanted to get a bigger back, and ultimately that just never panned out. So they circled back around to Morris a couple of months ago. He's been committed to Southern Cal. He was committed to Southern Cal for quite some time. And, everybody kept on saying, well, Daune Morris. And, Austin Price and Matt Ray and us over at VolQuest just continue to say, well, it's not going to get real until he actually comes on campus. Like, he had still never been to a junior day. He had still never been on an official visit, and he went to a game. Until he gets on campus, it's not going to be real. Well, they got it done a couple weeks ago. He came back. I'm not going to say which one, which one was pushing the hardest, but Morris ended up coming to Tennessee for the Kentucky win a couple weeks ago. We took an official visit, I want to say for the UTEP game this past weekend, and Daune Morris committed on Monday night to the University of Tennessee. He is a standout at Oakland High School, a very good opportunity to win a state championship this year. Oakland is, going to take on, going to continue to play in the playoffs this Friday. A really, really good chance to try to go to a state title game. But he's a really, really good player. Matt Ray and I have talked about him on Trail Tidbits all week, all season long. 5'10", 180 pounds. Not a highly rated guy. You look at kind of where he is nationally, according to the On3 industry rankings, a 3-star, 524th in the country, the 43rd running back, the 18th best prospect in Tennessee. But it is a guy that Tennessee liked an awful lot, and Southern Cal did a really good job in this regard too. But being so far away, kind of hard to hold off the home state school when it came down to it. If you're Daune Morris, but really, really good player and a guy that Tennessee likes the production, from where he's been in high school. Again, one of the state's most productive running backs in recent memory, and a guy that Tennessee had some interest in, but ultimately was kind of late to the party a little bit and wanted to look in a different direction. But ultimately, when they just couldn't get a bigger back, they made Morris a priority, and I think Darrell Sims did a fantastic job in kind of closing down this recruitment. So look at Matt Ray's impact analysis over at VolQuest.com. And he spoke with Oakland High School head coach Kevin Creasy. Quotes, Well, first off, he's a hard worker and loves football. He loves practicing football. He loves competition. Because of that, he's a really good running back, but he's also a good receiver. Then the things he does when he doesn't have the ball in his hands make him a really special player. He's one of the most physical guys on our team, and he's even been known to jump and play some defense and special teams for us. He's one of those guys that is a real patient, but when he finds an opportunity, he bursts through and makes a play. He will turn a negative yardage play into a positive yardage play, but a lot of times he will turn a 5-yard gain into a 50-yard gain. He is a fun guy to be around. He's a delight. He gets along with everyone in the locker room and is definitely a guy that people on our team like blocking for. So that is from Oakland head coach Kevin Creasy to Matt Ray over at VolQuest.com. And you look at kind of where that leaves Tennessee right now. We'll see what Dylan Sampson's going to do. I certainly think that he's going to go to the NFL, but he'll have a decision to make, Dylan Sampson, if he wants to go to the NFL. As it stands right now, Tennessee's running back room for next year would look like, depending on Sampson, Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis, Cam Seldon. We'll see what happens there. Of course, you always have to have your head on a swivel in terms of the transfer portal, because it's so easy for guys just to go into the portal and look for more greener pastures, an opportunity to the field. And of course, there's the dollar sign and name, image, and likeness to play a hand in that as well. But Tennessee's got some experience coming back in Peyton Lewis and Deshaun Bishop and Cam Seldon, but they're adding Justin Baker. And then, of course, now Daune Morris is going to be in that conversation too. So I like him. I think he's underranked. I think he's a little underrated in the class. I think he's got some good speed. I think that he is physical, and he's a lot stronger than a lot of people kind of know about him. But overall, Tennessee, I think, has done a really, really great job in terms of the class of 2025, as Tennessee's trying to hold on to some other guys. David Sanders, you guys have asked about. Onis Kananbani, cornerback. Florida's pushing hard there. Darion Smith, Auburn's pushing hard there. Tennessee's still trying to push for Isaiah Campbell, North Carolina, and trying to finish off this class, which signing day is next week. Still ranked inside the top 10. Tennessee currently at 9th right now, 6th in the Southeastern Conference. So still a lot to like of this class. Tennessee's done a great job of holding on to guys like Christian Gass, holding on to guys like Jaden Harmon, and we'll need to continue, Travis Smith as well. But signing day is coming up next week. So next week we'll have a couple of shows on recruiting, no doubt. But I like this one. Tennessee finishes it off. It took a little longer than they probably thought, but does indeed get the flip. Daune Morris flipping from Southern Cal to Tennessee. And let's just be frank as well as we kind of say goodbye on this segment. Like, who would want to go play for Cal or Southern Cal, USC, or Washington, or some of these teams on the West Coast that now have to travel so far. They have to travel so far now because the Pac-12 is dissolved. And I would not want to be in that situation if I was a player. That certainly, if you're not a football player, if you're like a volleyball player or women's basketball or men's basketball or baseball or softball, goodness gracious. I mean, that is, of course, a lot of those conferences will be traveling over there early in the season to play, but that is so much travel. So for Daune Morris, he just gets to go a couple miles east over to Neyland Stadium, and that is where he will play his college football. Hey, when we come back, we'll talk with Josh Ward, hit up our Ward Wednesday segment, all that and more as we continue on here with your your Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. Josh, what a difference a day makes, like Saturday, right, with all the craziness in college football. Entered the day heading to Neyland Stadium thinking there's no chance this won't be the final game at Neyland Stadium, and now very easily could be another game at Neyland Stadium. All that has to happen is you got to beat Vanderbilt. It's kind of setting the scene for what is going to be a monster week here in the state of Tennessee, in Knoxville, and of course in the Mid-State.
Huge game, and if Tennessee fans knew at the start of the season that the Vols would be 9-2 entering this game, I think most fans would have said, all right, that's a wrap. We're going to the college football playoff. We're going to be 10-2. Vanderbilt has been a better team than anybody expected, and that's why this game is not a gimme. And this past Saturday is a reminder of what can happen, because I don't know anybody that thought Oklahoma could do that to Alabama on Saturday night. For Josh Heupel, it helps that happened last weekend, so you can point it out to your team, all that stuff. Tennessee needs to go play a good football game, get a win, and if that's the case, You look and see what happens elsewhere to find out where you're going to go. But I would just be stunned to see Tennessee win on Saturday and not go to the college football playoff. And as you mentioned, based on other results, there's even a chance Tennessee could play another game in Knoxville, which would be incredible for the chances of advancing in the playoff.
How much fun has this season been? I mean, it's. I know there were some people that didn't want the expanded playoff and thought it would devalue the regular season. I mean, the regular season, I mean, I feel like the college football brass is just so pleased with how this is going because, I mean, every single weekend there's so many implications. There's so many people scoreboard watching. And, I mean, we've been talking about elimination games since, like, the 1st of October. I mean, it's been a blast.
Yeah, there's so many games that people are watching and have interest in that they typically would not. I'll also say, if you were not in favor of expansion, perfectly fine. That's no problem with me. But they expanded. That's what we have now. It's a 12-team playoff. And it's inarguable that here in the final few weeks, from our vantage point, talking about Tennessee football each week and what's happening on Saturdays, more fans are interested in other games like Florida Ole Miss. That's an obvious one. But there was a ton of interest in Texas A&M and Auburn. That's not typically a game that Tennessee fans are glued to see what happens, to see how it might affect the SEC race and Tennessee's playoff position. There's another domino after that. Minnesota Penn State had local interest. The Notre Dame Army game, I mean, cool setting in Yankee Stadium and everything that goes around those programs, but it's not typically a game where fans would have been interested in. And Notre Dame, of course, blew them out. But we can just keep going down the list. Indiana's presence, they weren't realistically going to be a playoff contender in a 4-team format, but they're ranked ahead of you, and that matters in a 12-team playoff field. We can just keep going on down the line. Now, Notre Dame USC is a big deal to Tennessee fans this week. That's added to the conversation and the interest level in the regular season of college football.
And, of course, the playoffs will expand again in 2026, probably up to 14 or 16 teams. So hopefully they'll cap it at some point, but expansion is not going anywhere. Well, let's look at the UTEP game real quick. I mean, can you take anything from that game to this weekend at Vanderbilt? I mean, Tennessee did exactly what it was supposed to. It was a 40.5-point favorite at 156-0. I mean, sure, it was a slow start, but ultimately what happened on Saturday is exactly what we thought would happen. Can we take anything from last Saturday to this Saturday in trying to take on Vanderbilt if you're Tennessee?
I don't really think so. I think comparing the two teams, we've seen the discussion of mobility at quarterback for UTEP and then Diego Pavia getting ready for this game. But I was already concerned about Diego Pavia's ability based on what he's done earlier this season before Tennessee went out and played UTEP. Concerned to a certain level. I'm not fearful for Tennessee's defense that they're going to get lit up like Alabama did earlier this season. I don't think that's going to happen on Saturday. Josh Heupel and his staff are well aware of Diego Pavia. So realistically, no. Out of the UTEP game, that game was what it was. Took too long, by the way, but you don't need me to rant about that. The offense had a slow start. I would suggest not doing that against Vanderbilt. Don't let Vandy go into the second quarter or halftime thinking, hey, we got a real shot here. Let's make some plays. We're going to win this game against Tennessee. Get out early. But that's been a conversation we've talked about Tennessee's offense all season long.
Percentage of orange inside whatever they call that stadium over there, First Bank Stadium, I believe is the name of it.
I don't know. I wonder if the checker Vandy thing is going to take off in some way. Probably not on Saturday, but there'll be a lot of Tennessee fans. That's just the way it works. Tennessee fans are scattered throughout the state. Tennessee fans are all over Nashville. And this has been a season where Vandy has played so much better and has created more interest there in what's going on with the Commodores. But it's the volunteer state. So we'd be kidding ourselves if we said that there won't be a ton of Tennessee fans in that stadium.
Do you think if Tennessee fans actually tried to checker that stadium, they could?
I don't think it would look nearly as good as it does.
Well, of course, because they'll be black and gold all around as well. But
could you see could you see a patchy checker? I wouldn't put anything past this fan base. So yeah, could it happen? For sure. Tennessee fans can do pretty much anything they put their minds to, and I really mean that.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be over 50% orange in that stadium, so it's going to be kind of a not necessarily a home game, but it's going to certainly not look like a road game. That is for sure.
Yeah, this is not going to be the raucous road environment Tennessee struggled with down in Athens or even in Fayetteville. This is not that on Saturday.
Yeah. Looking at Vanderbilt, you talked a lot about Diego Pavia, the quarterback. I mean, it's as simple as this: as they go, he goes, or as he goes, they go. They got a very New Mexico State flair to that offense because new offensive coordinator, quarterback, and tight end. Tight end's the go-to guy. I mean, he's leading the team in receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and all that. But if you're Tennessee, I mean, what's the key defensively to try to slow down Diego Pavia down? I know that he's a little bit banged up right now. He's not 100%. They actually played the backup quarterback a little bit last week because Pavia was just so beat up. What does Tennessee's defense need to do to kind of slow him down?
Yeah, contain, making sure your assignments are right. We saw down in Athens the impact of the tight end position because there were several of them against Tennessee's defense. So don't allow Vanderbilt to get easy, quick passes that can also become bigger plays. Because also in that Georgia game, and I recognize the level of athlete we're talking about in certain instances, but they were able to make some plays on the football and then make some plays after the catch. Don't allow that to happen. Just if Tennessee plays sound, if Tennessee avoids mistakes, penalties, the pre-snap stuff, you want to avoid that in this kind of game to help them out. Straight up, nobody questions which team is better, Tennessee or Vanderbilt. But if Tennessee allows extra opportunities for Vanderbilt, if Tennessee makes mistakes, and again, if you come back to the offensive side, they're struggling to get things going, and Vanderbilt can say, hey, if we can score once in the first half, then we got a shot to win in the second half. That's what you want to try to avoid. So offensively, they've got to help out the defense. I think the defense will be fine against Pavia and against Vanderbilt. Doesn't mean they're going to pitch a shutout like this past weekend, but Tennessee has kept every opponent except for Georgia under 20 points. The Vols will have a good chance to do that this week.
Tennessee basketball will have a afternoon game coming up today at 4:00, but 6-4-0, 6-0. I think it's 6-0.
6-0, yeah.
Yeah, 6-0 to begin the season. Really good weekend last weekend in the Bahamas. But some big news earlier this week, JP Estrella. God, timeout. He's been on campus for over a year, and I can't say his name now. Big news earlier in the week, JP Estrella is going to be out for the remainder of the season. Tennessee's already kind of limited, already kind of short-staffed, if you will, and certainly that was a guy that a lot of fans and Rick Barnes is excited about to see his progression this year.
Yeah, that's tough for the front court. I mean, that's a lot on Felix Okpara moving forward. The depth there will be a question. It will affect, I'm sure, what they do with their lineups over the course of the season. More small ball opportunities will be there with a guy like Igor Milicic Jr., who came in and has been a positive to start the season. I think Cade Phillips has been a positive to start the season. So they have some options of what they can do with and this lineup.
Dubar on the 4, right?
Yeah, there's another one. They have options to work with, and Okpara was going to play a lot already, but Estrella's a loss. I mean, if you get in foul trouble, you go up against a team that has real front court players, guys that can make a difference. We saw it be an issue last year for Tennessee, and it could be an issue this season. Backcourt, Tennessee will be able to put up some points, and Tennessee will be able to score, and they're going to cause all kinds of problems all season long for teams trying to score on the perimeter. So that is an obvious positive for the Vols to start the season. And Tennessee's really good, but avoiding injury moving forward. Cain Carr's dealt with the issue that's keeping him out for a few weeks with that thumb. Losing Estrella hurts for Tennessee. They can be okay, but they need to avoid injury in the front court moving forward. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah, what's that rotation down to? Or not even really rotation, just 9 players for the foreseeable future until Cam Carr comes back? Is that right?
Yeah, that's probably right. And that's okay. I mean, they're going to play a few teams here like today's game where the opponent just can't match up. So you can do whatever you want to in this kind of game. But yeah, Syracuse coming up in non-conference, that's a tougher game. Illinois is going to be a tough game in December. But I still think we talked about this with the point guard position too, and that matters. Like holding up, making sure you're ready for SEC play and you can hold up through those few months because that's going to be a grind. You're going to play a lot of physical teams in the SEC. So that will affect this front court conversation. That will affect the conversation of how many minutes Zakai Ziegler is playing because everybody at this point recognizes it's a postseason sport, and having Zakai at his best or as close to it as can be in March and beyond is going to be a big deal. That's going to be the same for Okpara, for Cade Phillips, for those other guys that will have to step up with Estrella loss for the season.
It's a big week for Tennessee football. It's a busy week with the holiday coming up on Thursday. Josh, what are you and Swain doing on the show this week, and when will you guys be on the air?
Yeah, we're off on Thursday, so hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. Appreciate everybody who tunes into our show. When I get stopped, Eric, it's awesome to still hear people say, yeah, listen to Locked On Vols, listen to Eric all the time, and love when you're on there on Wednesday. So that really means a lot. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody. We'll be on the air every day except for Thursday. So Friday will be as normal. We'll have our newsletter Friday morning. Any typos, blame on the tryptophan on Thursday, but I'll do the best I can when I send that out on Friday morning.
Josh, appreciate it as always, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eric.
Great stuff there as always from my buddy Josh Ward on Ward Wednesday. We do it every single Wednesday right here on Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for checking us out here today, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch. If you want some bonus content, you didn't see it, you haven't already listened or watched to it, I did a reactionary show to Tennessee in the college football playoff rankings late on a Tuesday night, so go ahead and consume that as well. If I don't, I'll have a show out tomorrow. Don't worry, I will have a show out tomorrow for Thanksgiving, but I hope you guys have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Get some rest, get some quality time, some fellowship with your families, and hope you guys eat a whole lot of food. We'll be back on Thursday and Friday right here as Tennessee gets ready for Vanderbilt. This is Locked On Vols.